Okay, so let's get started. Listen, thanks for joining. Sorry for the hiccups. A couple of key points for today, just so that we get the most from today. But number one, be clear on what it is that you want to get. You can see that the focus is improving the cash flow for your business. What is it that you specifically want to get from this session today? The clearer you are on what you want to get from today's session, the more likely that you are to get from it. Secondly, make notes, circle, underline, use different colors. All these are ways in which you can cement the learning which you get from today. And as we get to the end, then what we'll do is we'll have a review of the top 3 learnings from today, and equally but encourage you to set some actions from today, so that you can take some of these ideas and use them in your business moving forward. So as you know, Action Coach, the key word here is action. And so we're not, I'll do it one day, coach. It's about putting things into action. So it's important that you take something from today to be able to implement in your business. And that's my job. So you can give me feedback at the end on how I'm doing with that. So let's move on to the agenda, what we're going to cover today. So today we're going to look at how to improve the cash flow in your business. Now, that starts with an understanding of your mindset around money and how that may or may not be impacting the level of cash flow in your business. So we need to understand what cash flow is and why it's important to the business. Also, a key for us to develop and have more cash is understanding our cash gap, what the cash gap is in the business, what you can do to improve that. And then we're going to have a look at a whole bunch of different strategies on how you can improve cash coming in, reduce cash going out, and improve your cash flow altogether. So just before we get started, has everybody got something that they want to get from today's session? You don't have to answer out loud, but just have you got something written down in front of you that you want to get from today's session? The more, as I said, the more you've got written there, or the more clear you are on what you want to get from today's session, the better you are to achieve it. So I'm Nick Gray, for those of you who haven't seen me before. But I've been with Action Coach for 9 years now, and coaching businesses from all shapes and sizes, from all industries, from one-man bands to multi-million, multinational companies. And one of the main things that I enjoy from this job is coaching individuals and the individuals in the business to help them grow so that they can grow the business. And today we're going to look at not just the strategies for you to improve the cash flow in your business, but also the mindset around that, so that you're not just know what to do, but who you need to be to have that consistent cash flow. And I'm going to do a lot of talking in this today. There'll be room for questions at the end. But if you want to talk in a bit more detail about any of these, then just get in touch with us. So mindset. Why is your mindset important in business or finance or even cash flow? So have you ever heard of anybody someone who's come into a lot of money, like a lottery win, or a boxer who wins millions, and after a period of time, they've lost it all? And yet others have had money, lost it, and then built it back up again. Well, we'll see shortly the benefits that we'll see shortly that beliefs can control everything. They're the way that we view the world, and that's beliefs can actually impact everything we do. So where do we start? Well, firstly, you need to know you've got a problem, right? Is there a problem in the business, whatever it is, whether it's cash flow, business, personal life, whatever that is. So some of you might have seen this before: the point of power or the line of choice. But the point of power, you have a choice in your business. You can choose to fall below this point of power or this line of choice, or you can choose to be above it. Now, down here, you're blaming others for where you are, for the lack of cash flow, maybe making excuses, in which, in these cases, obviously, you're in denial. So Denial is where you don't even acknowledge the situation exists. So it could be relationships, finances, your body. If you're not willing to admit that you've got a problem, then obviously you can't be helped. But at some point, you know that it's true, but you've got to be willing to admit that we've got a challenge here. And it's a gradual thing. You know, you don't wake up one day and have all of a sudden put on 3 stone. Just need to mute everybody there. It's a gradual thing, right? And the same with cash flow. If there's cash flow issues in the business, then it's things that have developed over time. What part are we playing in impacting that cash flow? So it's easy to recognize in others. It's often easier to see what other people are doing wrong in other businesses than it is to ourselves. So if you can see what others are doing wrong or where they're having problems, how can we use that to look at our own businesses to change that? So once you know and you admit that there's a challenge, then we can move on to improve things. Also, when you're in denial, you can delay looking at your finances. So this is a form of denial as well. So where I've been in a situation in the past where profits have been dropping in the business and my income was falling and expenditure was rising, but I was putting things off. And I'm not sure what I was thinking, but I was always putting it off to avoid looking at it. And the same with clients. I had clients who are in the same situation where they've been falling behind and they've not looked at it. This is sort of like a fear of actually looking at it. And that's a form of denial. So if we've got a situation, then we've got to look at it and pick those pieces apart, if you like, look at the finances and find out exactly what our position is before we can move on. Excuses is another area. So when you give up all of your excuses, then you're able to move on, to succeed, if you like. So there's always a way that you can spin to make excuses. But when we stop using excuses, let's put it another way, most people use excuses not to do something, right? So what are the excuses that we're using that are impacting our cash flow? It's about picking up on these things and doing something about it. So 95% of businesses don't last 10 years. Most businesses, when they fail, it's because of lack of cash. So when will we do something about that to improve, reduce our excuses and build our cash flow? And then blame is another way of just avoiding ownership. So we blame others or we blame situations. We might even blame ourselves, but some use a globalized statement like, oh, it's not my fault, or that it's always the way we've always done it, or it's a genetic thing, or it's my family's fault, it's the government's fault, or our customers are not paying us, or our customers don't have money, or it's my bookkeeper's fault. But if you're pointing your finger at someone else, then 3 fingers are pointing back at you, right? So if we use a sporting analogy, the best coaches, when they're interviewed after the game, if they've had a loss, they won't point the finger. They'll say, we didn't have a great game. They'll take ownership for themselves. So that's what this line of choice is. We can be below that line of choice, but if we do, then we'll find out that we're powerless. If we want to have power, we've got to raise above this line of choice, right? Okay, so let's look at that and how we can use that to impact our cash flow. So at this line of choice, so if we've got a lack of cash flow, then what are we doing to cause that? What part are we playing in that? So first of all, responsibility. Who is responsible for the cash flow in the business? How clear are those people who are responsible on what needs to be done to ensure cash flow in the business? And if that's you and you're responsible, but you don't know, then that's good news. Is we're going to cover that today. We're going to go through a whole load of strategies to help you with that. But ultimately, somebody else is going to be responsible for this from you, because you'll give it to somebody else to do at some stage. But if you are responsible right now, then we need to know what we need to focus on to move forward to help the team. Now, accountability is just really being accountable. It's that word count gives the clue in that it's numbers. How do we measure success in this? So if we want to measure success in cash flow, how do we report that? We might have cash in bank. We might also look at debtor days. What metrics can we use to show success in our cash flow? When we're truly successful, true success comes from owning where you are now. So knowing that where you are now is because of all the actions, behaviors, and decisions that we've made. So when we can own where we are now, then we can move forward. We're in the power to. And the good news is that by being on this call just now, you're owning that because you're doing some learning around this to move forward and improve your cash flow. So that's excellent. Samuel, if there's any questions that come up in the chat box as we move forward, then just let me know. Another one that if you've been around Action Coach for a little while, you'll know what's coming up next. How clear just on what we want to have. So if you're on this webinar, if you're listening to the recording of this webinar, then what you want to have is quite likely to improve cash flow in your business. You'll know exactly what your goal is. But then what do we need to do to achieve that? Good news is we're coming on to some strategies shortly. But more importantly, who do we need to be? What is it that we're doing that's impacting that cash flow? So I just want to have a look briefly now at some beliefs that we might have around money. So what are 5 beliefs that you have around money? What are the first things that come to your head when you hear the word money? Just jot them down or put in the chat box. What are the 5 things that come to your mind when you hear about money?
Should we have maybe people jot it in the chat box so you can pick it up from there? That would be a great idea if you could do that, guys.
I did say that. Maybe that didn't come across.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to drop it in the chat box and then I can relay it back to Nick.
Perfect. So while you're doing that, here's some I prepared earlier. These are some of the common ones that people refer back to us. So things like money's the root of all evil. Money can't buy happiness. Having money is selfish. I'm not good with money. Money disappears fast. Rich people are arrogant. Money is just a tool. Money makes the world go round. So the truth is that the truth to you is whatever you believe, because beliefs are your view of the world, and beliefs are just what you currently hold to be true until you find something different. But the question I want to ask you is the beliefs that you have, if you have some of these beliefs and it's negative around money, how well is that serving you? So I've had a few conversations with clients recently where they've had a negative belief around what's happening with their clients. Or my clients have got no money, or no one's got any money anymore. So let's consider 2 business owners. One's got a view that there's no money out there and his customers are cutting back. Another one, I say he, could be she. So another one, she's got a view that there's more than enough money out there and their customers are desperate to buy what they have. How are those 2 beliefs impacting those 2 people? And which of those 2 beliefs is going to have the more positive impact? If you believe your customers don't have money, your brain will find examples to support your way of thinking. It's called confirmation bias. So one of my clients who I mentioned who said this about their clients, the quotes that they're giving them, they're just saying they're too expensive. He sent me some phone calls and we listened to some phone calls, and they've just not been positioning with the customer why they cost a lot more than their competition. And it's natural, isn't it? If you've got 2 businesses that on the face of things are the same, then people are going to go for what's the cheapest. Whereas if you can position up front this is the reason why we're more expensive than our competition, and this is the benefits, this is what you'll get, then you're giving people a reason why they want to buy at a higher rate. So just examine your beliefs and think, how well are these serving me? What do I need to change about that? So on this next slide, you may have, I'm guessing some of you have seen this before, the identity iceberg. And simply put, all this is, it's an analogy of an iceberg, much the same as our identity. Our identity, we only see 10, 11% of, or the small proportion of what people do. We see the results people get, their actions, behaviors, and decisions. We don't see the stuff below the waterline. And we can use this to help us get what we want. So let's look at results. We take it back to one of the previous slides. Results is what you want to have. So if we're talking about cash flow, what is it that you want to have? Do you want to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenditure in cash in the bank ready in case of a rainy day? That would be a sensible goal to have around cash flow. But whatever the goal is, that's your goal. What is it that you want to have? Again, beliefs might hold you back with this. You might think that that's not possible to have. And is that belief helping you? Some of the things we're going to do are the strategies, which we'll come on to shortly. That's how you get that stuff. But the biggest impact will be on this stuff below the waterline. This stuff below the waterline is who you are, who you're going to be. So I want you to score yourself on, there's 10 items here. Just score yourself on each of those. You don't need to share the score, but on results, score yourself out of 10 how clear you are on what results you want in a cash flow environment. It could be anything else, but in this instance, we're talking cash flow. Score yourself out of 10 on how good you are at taking action to improve that. How good, what's the behavior for you and your team around cash and the decisions you're making? Or any strategies that you've got in place for that do. What strategies are you working on? If you're a low score out of 10, maybe there's an action for you to take to improve that. So let's look at the B as well, below this waterline. So if we start with skills, so skill is something that if done repeatedly, you get good at. So your behaviors reflect the skills that you have, and that impacts what you're going to have. So what skills do you need to learn to improve your behaviors, which will increase your cash flow? So what are you not so good at? So is it knowing the strategies to improve the cash flow? Like I say, we'll come to that shortly. Is it managing your team so that they can do this accurately? Is it how to communicate with customers and with suppliers? Is it how to negotiate with customers and suppliers? Could be any number of things. Could be some things I haven't mentioned, but what's your skill level out of 10? And what do you think you need to improve? From beliefs. So you'll find evidence to prove what you believe. If you believe that there's limited cash out there, or people won't pay you on time, or people won't pay terms of 7 days, that's a belief. How well is that serving you? If you believe that money is the root of all evil, is that belief impacting you? So what do you need to do with your beliefs? Score yourself out of 10 with that and see if there's an action that comes from that. Deeper still are your values. So these are universally held human principles. So like honesty or family. So they can be held, they're generally universal. You know, you have people in different places of the world will have the same values, but they might show up in a different way. So spirituality might be different in this country to Africa or Asia or something like that, but they're generally pretty transferable. So what values do you need to, so what are your values? So another way of looking at this is values can impact the results you get. So let's say you've got your results you want to get are, I want to have more cash flow. But one of your values is to be liked by everybody and to make sure that nobody gets upset. So what happens when somebody doesn't pay you on time consistently? Maybe you're worried about picking up the phone to talk to them because that will go against your values of upsetting somebody. But the thing about values is that they won't ever change, but they might change priority depending on your situation. So if you've got some cash, maybe you won't call that person when they're late. But when your back's against the wall and you've really got no cash, then maybe your values will move to the side and you have to phone them. So be conscious of your values and how that's serving you as well. Are they helping you or hindering you? In your identity that's the words that you say to yourself when you follow those I ams. So what is it that you're saying about cash? Are you saying I'm no good with cash? Are you saying I'm happy where I am, to be honest with you? Or it could be that you still think of yourself as a technician in the business who does the work. And you need to develop an identity of being the business owner who runs the strategy for the business. Again, with identity, what would you score yourself out of 10? And what could you do to improve that if you need to? Then environment really captures everything. So if you're surrounding yourself with people or what you're listening to, let's say you're listening to the news once or twice a day, and it's telling you about all these negative stories, because they rarely have good stories on the news, right? It's making you think that people have got no money and that nobody can afford your services. And who's going to want to pay extra for this service that we provide? So be careful about your environment, who you're surrounding yourself with, people who are negative speaking or even negative media. How about looking for some positive media to support the goals you want to achieve, how and why that's possible, and surround yourself with people who are already doing what you want to do. So score yourself out of 10 on those areas. And if you've got something, or the lowest one, just take an action from that point. So we're going to move on now to some specifics around cash flow. And what is cash flow and how we can get that working in our business. So we've already touched on this, but cash flow is, well, they say that turnover's vanity, profit sanity, and cash is king or queen, right? Cash flow is the key to businesses surviving. So it's one of the main reasons why 8 out of 10 businesses fail in the first 5 years. Is because they don't understand the difference between cash flow and profit. Or if they did, they didn't manage the cash flow well enough. So cash flow is think of it like the oil in the engine of the car. It's the lubricant to take the heat away and to keep the moving parts flowing. So if there's no oil in an engine, then it seizes up, right? And it will be destroyed very quickly. The same goes with the business without cash flow. So this is why every business owner should understand how to manage the cash flow. This is the real life picture of the pounds in and out of the business, and that's what cash flow is. It's the pounds in and out of the business. And sometimes what we find is business owners, they spend based on profit, not on cash flow. So these are some of the things that we need to look out for. So cash in is sales, bank loans, sale of assets, cash injection, and some of the drains could be taxes, cost of your stock or your purchases or your materials, fixed assets, loan repayments, and your drawings, that sort of thing. So where might we first start to see a problem in the business? The first place is probably our cash gap. How clear are you on the cash gap in your business? If you've seen this before, I'm just going to go through it briefly to help you understand what the cash gap is so you can identify this in your business, and then we're going to look at some strategies about how to improve the cash gap. So in this instance, we're looking at an example where they're holding some stock. So they buy their stock on day 0 on the left-hand side here. They're holding that for up to 60 days before they either ship it out or it's made into something where people buy it from them. After 30 days, see it says payables, after 30 days, we have to pay cash for that stock, but we've got nothing back for it yet. It's not until day 60 that the goods are dispatched. And then it's enough, depending on what our terms are, it could be 60 days in this case before we get something back in terms of payment from our clients. Now that's if they pay us on time, if it's 60 days is our term. So we can see from when we pay for it after 30 days to when we get paid, there's a 90-day cash gap there. So we're basically funding, we're giving a free loan to clients for that 90 days. So what can we do to improve or reduce that cash gap? How can we fund that cash gap, reduce that cash gap, and make things better for us? So that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at some key strategies. Invoice immediately. This might sound obvious, but simple, but simple doesn't mean it gets done. So many businesses are slow to invoice their work, not because they don't see the importance necessarily, and they might even sometimes forget to invoice altogether. I've definitely come across that. So put a process in place so invoices are issued as soon as possible. Challenge your beliefs about, challenge your beliefs about what your clients will accept. So you'll probably find that if you normally invoice on completion, you could invoice or even send the whole lot out on the outset. You could invoice parts or at least even the whole lot at the start. Some of your existing customers might resist, but it's still worth asking. But at least test it with new clients. Number 2, offer an incentive for advance payments. So if you're making a healthy margin, you might be prepared to sacrifice some of that in exchange for better cash flow. So if so, think about offering a discount for settlement in advance. So if you provide a regular service and charge monthly, you could offer a 5% discount for payment annually in advance. So you get all that money right up front. Or you could offer some additional level of products or services to clients paying in advance. So again, the danger of discounting, but weigh up the pros and the cons about having this cash up front. If you are discounting for this, or you're giving them services or products to the value of, it should cost less than the equivalent discount. Offer a cash settlement discount. So similar to the advance payment, customers with cash in the bank, interest rates have gone up more recently, but they're still earning very little in the bank. If you can offer them a 1% discount on settling immediately, 1% worked out as an APR could be as high as 12% on an annual percentage rate. So that might be it might be really attractive to a lot of businesses if they're cash rich. Cash with first orders. So when we're starting a new client, you might need to explain to them the terms required for payment in order for the first payment. So some company, when you're setting up a new client for credit terms, it can take a little while. But if we just say to them, the first order is always a cash order for whatever reason to enable us to get the credit terms in place, etc., then just have that as a standard procedure. If they're unwilling to pay cash, then are they the type of client that you want long term? And the last one on here is taking a deposit. Hopefully we're already taking a deposit, but it doesn't only improve your cash flow taking a deposit, but it also provides a level of safety. So if you have to make a purchase or make bespoke goods, let's say, or even a service that that can't be taken away once it's done, then a deposit should at least cover the cost of your outlay. Taking a bigger deposit, if you're already taking a deposit, how much more could you take? Again, challenge your beliefs around what your clients would accept. Just because you're taking a 10% deposit already, and you think that's all people will take because that's what the industry take, try it. Try taking 25%. Try taking 50%. See what happens. Ask for stage payments if your projects are going on for a bit longer. So if they are longer projects, then be organized enough for stage payments or staggered payments, and make sure you make the agreement up front. So again, if your clients are reluctant, that's not a great indication of whether you'll be paid on time in the long run anyway. And if that's the case, then consider a higher price for payment on completion, or a lower price for stage payments. Sell it to them that way. Credit cards and PayPal rather than the receipts. Again, it will cost you a small percentage, but is that better to have that option up front and make it simpler for them? Have a cash collection process. So many businesses fail to collect the cash because they haven't got the time, or they haven't got a process in place. So have you got a systematic process that chases people up? Not just emails, but phone calls as well. What is your process? It's worth documenting that. Consider outsourcing. So if you find that cash collections is something you don't enjoy, again, going back to your values, get a professional to do it for you. Get them to run the cash collections process efficiently and set out the process that they need to do. Offer different terms. Again, so a good example of this is the construction industry, where they say, well, we have to do 60 days. It's what everyone does, or we have to do it at the end of the next month. It's what everybody does. Just because it's the way that it's always been done doesn't mean it's the way that it has to be done. If you've got new customers, assumptively telling them this is how we do business, 9 times out of 10, they'll go with that. And try it with your existing customers. And the last few on improving cash collections. So build relationships with people who pay you. You might think that you're doing business with a company, B2B, but there's somebody behind that. So who is that person who makes the final decision about when to pay? Do you know the name of that person who can make the decision for you? What would influence their decision in a positive way? How about how about thanking them for paying on time? Just a simple thing like paying on time. How about sending a card thanking them for payment, even if it's a few days late? Instead of moaning at them because it's late, thanking them because they've made the payment. What impact might that have on them next time? Maybe you get it a bit sooner next time. Send payment. Yeah, so if you send in the payment due reminders, think about sending them before the due date. So most companies start chasing overdue payments a few days after the payment's due. So what happens then is that the customer might say something like, I haven't received the invoice, or that they only do a payment on the 3rd Friday of the month, or my dog ate my homework, whatever it might come up with. If you're proactive with it, most invoice sending systems will allow you to do that and send them something out. You might want to say something like, we just wanted to ensure that you had the invoice and that you haven't got any outstanding queries on invoice number 123456, so that the payment can be made on Monday. Again, what we're doing here is we're being proactive and cutting off those problems that might happen before they happen. Also, if you're getting paid before it happens, then maybe that's when they've got money in the account. and everybody else will be waiting until the due date or the end of the month. Measure target debtor days. So if you're not aware of what the debtor days are the average number of days it takes you to collect a debt. So let's say that your terms are 30 days and you measure your debtor days. This will be the average. So some people will pay you after 15 days. Some people might wait for 60 days. Some people, so the average might be, say, 38 days. Your terms are 30, your average is 38 days. So what strategies, if you focus on that number, how can you get that number from 38 down to 30? What strategies can you work on to bring that down? One thing might be reducing your terms. There might be any number of different strategies you can work on to improve that. But what you focus on gets better. So measure and target debtor days. Fix or dump bad players. So good cash flow is so important to the business that it's worth considering just dumping these bad players. And definitely for persistent offenders, you could even start with warning them that they need to pay on time, or face reduced credit days, or even withdraw their credit facility altogether, and they have to pay cash until we can get them up to date. Again, this might go against your values, but really you've got to understand that if they're not paying you, they're costing you money. They're taking a free interest, an interest-free loan out from you and your bank, and you're paying the interest for that. And then lastly on this, require partial settlement for disputed invoices. So if you've got a dispute, and let's say you've got an invoice for £1,000 and they're disputing £500 of it, well then at least get them to pay the other £500 right now, and get agreement of this in your terms up front. Say, if ever there's a dispute, we're more than happy to work with you. We will require payment of the undisputed amount up front. So that's getting stuff coming in. What about reducing the cash out? So let's just have a look at some of these. So running a cost review every 6 months. This is a great, well, for any big costs that we've got, we want to be having a review of those regularly. But how can we negotiate with the suppliers to get those costs coming down? So anything that's increased, dig deeper and find out the reason why it's gone up. Exert some pressure to keep those total costs down. Most businesses don't do this, and then there's probably a number of reasons, but it takes time and effort, and few people enjoy giving the suppliers a hard time, right? So if you're asking somebody to do this, an employee to do this, make sure that they aren't simply avoiding it because they hate it too. And chances are that if you put the same amount of money into their pockets, whether they achieve it or not, it might be worth giving them giving them an incentive, or even just a thank you for the work. But if you're giving it to somebody else, make sure you target them. Negotiate longer term payment terms for suppliers. Again, if you approach people as soon as possible, they'll work with you. Suppliers, and the same as you'd much rather know that someone's got a problem and they came to you and you offered them a solution, or they came up with a solution, rather than them just not answering you. When you're collecting, you'd much rather people tell you than you having to keep chasing them, because you're wasting time as well. So negotiate longer terms. If you're on 7 days, go for the 15 or 30 or 60. Improve profitability. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But more profit will impact the cash position in the business. So what about increasing the prices in the business? Delaying purchases. So payments also, if you delay the purchase, then obviously the payment's due later. So quite often we find that if we manage these purchases, we don't quite need them right now. Or even we might be able to have a conversation with the supplier to delay the initial payment. And reducing inventory levels. Fairly straightforward, but have we got a good stock control system around the inventory levels? Are we reviewing just what it is that we're buying each time? A couple more here. So drop ship straight from suppliers. So some suppliers will, a lot of suppliers will send your order direct to your customer, as opposed to it coming to you and then to the customer. You can get it straight to them and cut out the middleman. And some of the suppliers will even not put their details on there so that it's, the customer doesn't know it's not coming from you. Cutting marketing that doesn't work. We need to be testing and measuring our marketing so that we know what works and what doesn't. But if you know that, then you can cut what doesn't work. Reduce your travel costs by using phones, Zoom, and Teams. Invoice electronically. I would imagine most people are doing that now with online accounting. Sell unnecessary assets. So again, as part of your review of costs, you can see just what your assets are and whether you're using them effectively. Right. So let's have a quick look at cash flow forecasts. So who has a cash flow forecast in their business? Just raise your hand if you can, if you've got a cash flow forecast in your business. Yep, brilliant. Matthew's got a cash flow forecast in his business. So this doesn't need to be complex, the cash flow forecast. The main premise here is we want to be guesstimating and improving our guesstimation. That's how I like to think of it. So we want to have our sales coming in. We're predicting our sales. The best way is to start by predicting the next 4 weeks. What are our sales that are coming in? Now, this is the cash, not the profit. So what cash do we predict that we're going to be paid from the jobs we're doing in the coming 4 weeks? We ultimately want to get up to 12 months if we can, predict ahead 12 months. Let's start with 4 weeks. So we've got cash coming in. Then what expenditure have we got going out? And you can see on this example, hopefully it's not too small, but if you want a template, we can send you out a template if you haven't got one already for a cash flow forecast. What predicted expenditure will you be spending in the next 4 weeks? You can see this quite easily by looking at the last 4 weeks of your bank statements and just moving that on a month. Your fixed costs will be pretty similar. They should be the same next month as they were last month. Your cost of goods sold or your variable costs will reflect the sales that you're making. So that might take a little bit more time. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything, isn't it? The other thing was, look out when you're doing that. If you're just starting off by projecting your next 4 weeks, by reviewing your last 4 weeks, remember to check for quarterly payments or 6 monthly payments or yearly payments. So you might need to just look at your bank statements for the last 12 months to see if you've paid any annual bills and put them in the relevant month. And then what we're doing is we've got then a projection of where we're going to be in the next 4 weeks. Simply put, we want to just review that weekly or daily in some cases. Where are we actually versus what we predicted we're going to be? So we projected our cash flow for this week is going to be this. What did it actually turn out at? And what can we learn from that projection? Were we miles out? Did we assume that these sales were going to go ahead and they didn't? Why was that? What can we learn next week? And just keep learning. So every week when we replace our estimated with our actual, we're learning and we're getting better and better at projecting our cash flow. So just lastly, a couple other things to have as a plan B. Know exactly what our tax liability is. So you're building cash to set aside for your tax liability. So you can guesstimate again what your tax liability is going to be with the help of your accountant and your accounting software for the next tax period. And the same with your VAT liability. You should be able to make a good guesstimation on what the VAT liability is and set that aside. Set it aside monthly or weekly, depending on what your frequency of payments are. And one last thing to think about is arrange an overdraft even when you don't use it, when you don't need it. But don't go in it only use it for an emergency. So if you do get one, it's there for a rainy day, but don't be tempted to go in it, and make sure you're clear with whoever else is responsible for cash payments. Good. So, sorry, there was a lot that I wanted to get into today's session, and there's going to be a recording for you to go back and listen to again. What I want you just to do is just to have a quick review of your notes or what we've gone through today, and just to mentally or write down what's been the top 3 things that you've taken from today.